All you left me was the radio, and it goes like ooh, yeah, yeah. And it goes like ooh, yeah, yeah. When I press play, all I hear is you. And it goes like ooh, yeah, yeah. When I press play, all I hear is you. Oh, every single song tells me we're through. Yeah, but I can't turn it off 'cause it's the truth. Yeah, it's the truth. And it goes like
Hi, hello, and welcome to this panel discussion with young Africans across this beautiful continent of Africa. My name is Irfan Mangera, the Youth Activism Program Manager at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, based in Johannesburg, South Africa. This partnership and panel is brought to you by the University of KZN Center for Creative Arts through the Artfluence Human Rights Festival. Today, we've assembled some inspiring and amazing young Africans who are doing the work and not just speaking about the change that we want to see. But before I begin, there's a reason why we've looked at and having this conversation on this auspicious day, the 25th of May. 60 years ago, the Organization of African Unity was born, and at a later point, the African Union. 60 years ago, there was a call to unify this beautiful continent in the hope that we can continue to find development, push for peace, push for change. This was an organization in 1963 that looked forward and had a vision of an Africa that was united and an Africa that was brought together to really develop our respective country and continent for the future of young people who bear the legacy and who continue to live and grow up amidst all the multiple crises we currently face. Today's theme is raising the banners of freedom, being the scriptwriters of our destiny. It draws on the inspiration of two of Nelson Mandela's famed quotes about young people taking up leadership. And I quote, "To the youth of today, I also have a wish to make. Be the scriptwriters of your destiny and feature yourselves as stars that showed the way towards a brighter future." An additional quote reads, "Young people are capable, when aroused, of bringing down the towers of oppression and raising the banners of freedom." Today, we have an amazing group of young Africans to speak to us about how they continue to take forward this message and this call. Without wasting any more time, let me introduce the panelists and give them 2 minutes to introduce who they are, where they're from, and then we'll go into a discussion about what is it that they're doing and how do they draw on inspiration to create change. I'm going to start with Enoch Nakulanga. Enoch, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ivan. I am very happy to be here and be one of the panelists on Africa Day. What a wonderful way to celebrate an amazing day like this. I am currently based in Uganda, and I am a development practitioner who strongly believes that Africa will not, a beautiful Africa, the Africa we want, will never be created by someone else, but ourselves. I founded an organization called Lead Minds Africa, and the main goal is to unite young people from across different borders to work on solutions that really focus on solving the challenges that their communities face. In 2018, I was honored to meet President Barack Obama, and he highlighted the work that we do in Uganda and across East Africa. And currently, I am one of the 30 young leaders selected by the McLean Institute to participate in one of their Global Leaders program. I am really looking forward to learning and sharing what I have learned over the years as we go along this discussion. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks so much, Enoch. And I think there's a lot more that you're not telling us about, but I will get to those in the questions soon. Thank you for your introduction. Next up, Lokadinch. I think you can please unmute yourself. Quick introduction. Who is this amazing young African who has joined us today?
Hi everyone, I am Lokandinch Sylvia Gomez. I am a Gambian residing in the Gambia. Basically, a 22-year-old, well, everyone would call me the stubborn activist in Gambia. But basically, I love occupying spaces that I can occupy when it comes to youth work, and ensuring that I give youths enough reason to see why they need to work for change and not just talk about it. So basically, this is what I do. I work for certain CSOs as well, and I pioneer a project or an organization in the Gambia.
Wonderful. So amazing. We're going to unpack some more of that soon. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. Mr. Lawrence Manaka, you can unmute yourself and introduce who you are. I think you're still muted.
Yes, I just realized that now. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Lawrence Manaka. I'm 20 years of age. I'm currently the Deputy Chairperson of Equal Education, which is an active organization that is fighting for quality education in South Africa. We do that through advocacy, analysis, as well as my activism. So I do a whole lot outside of equal education, but currently my focus is at equal education. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lawrence. Amongst the other hats that you wear, but the equal education one is definitely one that stands out. Thank you for that. Next up, Nyokase, Cass. All the way from Malawi. Do you want to unmute yourself and introduce who you are?
Hi, everyone. Hi, my name is Nyokase, but all my friends call me Cass. I am an artist. I'm from Malawi, and I'm so excited that, there's someone from the Gambia on the panel because I'm wearing a T-shirt in honor of the Gambia, in honor of that historical movement that the youth and the Gambia led in 2017. I think that was against Yaya Jammeh. It was wow. It was just, to be alive during that time was just phenomenal. But I digress. I am an artist. I am an artist and an artivist, and I am the creative director of Good Talent, Creative Enterprise Hub. So we do skills incubation, advocacy, and digital marketing, networking, talent incubation as well for young creatives and artists who want to use their talent and skill to develop their community and just to generate businesses that we can market across borders in Africa and across the world. I'm also an alumna, of Future Elect. And I say this because there are two, at least, on the panel. They will introduce themselves, they know themselves. But yes, that's about me, Nyokase Cass, Pan-African artist. So happy to be here.
Wonderful to have you. Thanks so much for that, Cass. I think we have a few more just before we go into the meaty bits. Rosaline, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm really glad to meet for the opportunity to speak this So my name is Rosalind Chigbia. I'm from Togo, and I live in Lomé, the capital city of Togo. It's in West Africa. So I have a background in agriculture, but actually I'm not working in agriculture. I'm more working in, let's say, women's rights organization. So I'm a feminist activist, and very early I was driven by the desire to make myself useful for my community, and I was also very sensitive to how society treats women or disabled person. I found it really unfair, and I wanted to do something. So that's why since 2017 I engaged myself in the civil society, and I have helped created and managed as a volunteer through organization Girls Motion, Together for Change, and Negress Feminists. And those organizations, like two of them intervene in the issue of gender-based violence, where we provide support and we take care of the women and also sometimes men that are victims of sexual violence or gender-based violence. The other organization work in citizen leadership, how to educate, and we offer also capacity building for everyone who want to do something for the society. And I'm also involved in children's rights. So actually, I'm a youth ambassador of UNICEF Togo in my country. And we also work on women and girls empowerment by offering capacity building on maybe how to create a startup or how to gain some experience sharing opportunities, etc. So With that, I have worked with almost maybe 1,000 women and girls on those different subjects. And I'm really happy to be with you here and to share more about my work and how I'm able to, with all my colleagues and my friends, how we are able to induce change and social change in Togo and in our local community. Thank you very much.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much for that introduction, Rosaline, and for all that you're doing. Really, really inspiring. Next up, we have Ruth Kangwa, all the way from Zambia.
I'm sure that you've seen the flag, and I must come with some noise. So I'll be saying, long live Africa, long live, and viva, viva. So my name is Ruth K. Kangwa Ndlovu. Coming all the way from Zambia. I am a troublemaker, and I call it a beautiful troublemaker. I make beautiful trouble in Zambia. I'm a human rights lawyer, as well as got an aspect of farming to me, but as well as an active youth and gender activist here in my country. I currently lead a social movement called Girls Gone Political, where we're championing and really fighting for the representation of more young women and girls in the political space and as well as in the public service. And I am a member of Zambia's biggest youth social movement called Youth for Parliament. And we're doing beautiful trouble, creating beautiful trouble. Thank you so much for having me here, and a happy Africa Day to all of you.
Thank you so much. Creating beautiful trouble. I think that's a very lovely way of putting it, and we hope that we can all take inspiration to make more trouble across the continent. Last but not least, we have Shari Maluleke, all the way from South Africa. Shari, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shari Maluleke, and I am... this part always makes me so anxious. Okay, I'm Shari, and what I do is I am currently studying my honors degree in psychology at WITS, but I am also the co-founder of the Menstrual Project. And basically, the Menstrual Project is an organization where we are educating anybody and everyone about menstrual health and menstruation rights. That includes also climate change and mental health activism, because all three intersect. And yeah, that's what I do, fighting for menstruation dignity and safety.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for introducing yourselves. Clearly, we've assembled a very strong A-team of young Africans who are taking on the challenges and creating the good trouble that will hopefully lead to a better future. We have the next 40 minutes for us to keep this engagement going and robust. And I know that there are many in this room who have given so much of their time and of their lives towards a future that we aren't even certain of 100%. And living and growing up in a time in South Africa and in Africa as a whole, we find ourselves challenged once again, where we see what's happening in Sudan, we see what's happening in the Congo, in many other parts of the continent, or where such violence and conflict continues to jeopardize any form of peaceful and developmental outcome for the betterment of all of us. And it's a challenge in a time where we know that our institutions are not as strong as we'd like them to be, and we continue to keep that fight up. So the next part of this, the questions, speak to what work you're doing. So you've introduced who you are. Now we want to know a bit more about what is it that you're doing and what gives and draws you inspiration, so that in the face of those challenges and in the face of the multiple crises, we inspire not just ourselves, but others to continue working for that Africa we want. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Ruth, I think, given that you're the one who's creating great trouble, you can lead us off on this.
Thank you once again, Ifan. So basically, with the current work that I'm doing, especially actively in the civil society, and I call myself, if I do ever get into the public service, I will be like a third generation public servant, except that I've taken a very political route. We are coming from a past here in Zambia where a lot of young people or citizens were infringed of their human rights, the freedom of expression, the freedom of assembly, the freedom of movement. And this birthed more citizens who decided to come together for unity of purpose, unity to want to, not to be disgruntled per se, but to break down status quos and barriers that infringe citizens from exercising their inherent human rights. And what we are doing right now, I think I mentioned Youth for Parliament. I'll give a very practical example. Zambia came from an election in 2021 where we were coming from a background with a lot of tense, widespread violence, a lot of electoral malpractice, but it took us, the young people, coming together and ensuring that we overthrow a government and bring in an opposition leader, President Hakainde Hichilema, who had been in opposition for over 20 years and was honestly and seriously the real, he was a real example of how a citizen's human rights can be infringed, even if you're in the opposition. But what the young people did was something that was very remarkable. And this is where most of our work came from. We started our work under Youth for Parliament from 2019, and we launched a campaign called the Get Out campaign. Ideally, what we decided to do is to plan 3 years before the elections to create a build-up where we encouraged young people to get out and participate. What we meant by participating is ensuring that we hold our government accountable to the words, the pronouncements, but most importantly, ensuring that we hold them accountable to allegations of corruption. This did not settle very well with the former Patriotic Front government, because we ended up 2 years now in the second phase of the campaign, and we're calling it Get Out and Register to Vote. As young people and a group of young people took the risk when we were denied a permit to protest peacefully. We took the risk to now go into the bush and do a live stream video and utilize digital activism to get citizens to understand the gravity of the importance of knowing the kind of leaders that we put into place and ensuring that the citizens do not suffer at the expense of decisions that are not shaped by them. And through this bush protest, really, we had a lot of young people now who understood that we're a year before elections and it is now or never. And we had to really go into very robust activism by going to the grassroots. 2 days before the election, I'll give you a very practical example, and it happened to me too. We saw the internet shut down. But for some of us who were activists, we had people reclone our SIM cards and network dropping, and I couldn't make any calls out or to speak to any of our people when we were mobilizing campaign or voter tabulation. And it took us to the push to say, should we start now activism through smoke signals? Because in a time where we saw the civic space shrinking, made us worry, where they're passing a cybercrimes act that could monitor. I think for me, that was the scariest experience. I've never known that, people are like, we're trying to call you Ruth, but nobody's picking up. And I'm like, my phone is on, I have no network, my bars are dropped down. But what continued to make us drive change, even now that there's a new dawn government, as we call it, is that young people have understood the value of their voice and where we stand. And we've utilized these movements that we've created to never be a benchmark for only tokenism or to be utilized just to say, oh, the young people are doing this, but we're still deliberately excluded in places of participation. And that's why we continue to create beautiful trouble by demanding for spaces in which young people should have their voices heard. And the last practical example, because I'm a typical politician, I can speak, is one thing I did do, even after the New Dawn coming in, is I petitioned Zambia's parliament as an individual citizen away from the movement influence or organizations jumping on. And we were petitioning the National Assembly to say they need to reform and review Zambia's Youth Act of 1986. So we're in the process of that, a lot of bureaucracy because of government systems, but we continue to hold them accountable to ensure that they do the right thing for the young people.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. And I think it's so apt that the theme of today was how young people must raise the banners of freedom and be the script writers of our own destiny. And what you've indicated now is young people taking charge and recognizing that we have to be the ones who lead any form of change that happens. And I thank you for doing that and maintaining the cause, because it's quite, you know, it's a difficult fight, and often because of the difficulty, we've seen many young activists who fall by the wayside, given the many attempts either at their lives or how it affects them mentally, physically, etc. But yes, this is just amazing, and we're only getting into the discussion now. Rosaline, perhaps you can come in and engage us on the work you're doing, particularly as a young feminist, as somebody who's working in the agricultural sector. How does that link to us rewriting the script about where we see our futures?
Thank you very much, Irfan. It's difficult to come after the intervention of Ruth because she's so passionate and they are doing so much wonderful work on the ground that's, I don't know if my parts can be that interesting, but I will try. So how we are working on in my organization or with my friend is we are trying to do what we can, because we have only two options. You can either accept situation as they are, or you can try to do some action as little as they can, or as little as they are, they have an impact. And for me, one of my motto is changing one life at a time. So if your action is just changing one life at the other option was the life of these people won't be changed. So I feel like we have to do action, even if what we stand against is really big, and in Togo is really big because we have a really patriarchal society that there is still this need of changing mentality in accepting that yes, women have the same value than men. It's still difficult, even if in institutions we are seeing more women, even if in some fields we are seeing more women, even if our prime minister is a woman, there are still a lot of inequality in the ground, inequality in everyday life, inequality in families, and there is a lot of work to do. And sometimes when we look at the problem, we are asking ourselves, is it able one day that the world of Togo will, like, is it possible to have a just society? And in that time, you can feel you wanted to, sometimes you can want to step back because it's like a huge work, or like you are maybe tired of all the obstacles that are coming, but we keep telling ourselves that even if it's one person that is touched by what we are doing, is better than not doing anything. So it's really this mentality that we use to start working and start bringing more of into engaging themselves into action, not only in women's rights sector, but also in environment sector, also in agriculture, but like healthy food sector. We need to bring information to people. We need to bring information to ourselves. We need to be informed and build our own capacity, get our own knowledge, and we can just start somewhere. So the most important things is to start somewhere. There's somewhere to do something. It's really important to not let ourselves saying that, oh, can this change one day? Yes, it's possible. If we start now, even if it takes 20 years, if it takes 100 years, it will change. So we have to start right now. And now we are thinking more strategically, maybe because actually our activities are more on the ground with women's, like, because the support system for sexual violence in Togo is not really strong, is not really working. So what we decide to do is to take our own money, our own time, to support those women that are victims to go to have health services or to go into a legal procedure if and when they want to So we start with our own, with our own resources. We are not funded yet. So we just start, and the few women we are working with, the few women we are having meeting with monthly to share their difficulty to heal, to share how the experience is holding them to have a better future, and maybe sharing with them what are the possible solutions. Sometimes we had a meeting, we can have a meeting with those women, and instead of 10 people that say that we come, it's only 3, but we still hold the meeting because those 3 people life are important, and what we share in that meeting is really helpful for them. So we try to use our own resources, and that's one message I want to convey. Like, we do not need we do not need big funding or big resources or a big meeting to change things. We can just start in our circle of control, what you can control directly, how the people you can impact directly, and then the people you influence, because we are in some group that our opinion are taken into account. We are in, it can be from the academic background or the professional background. We are in a circle that we can influence something. So we have to start speaking. So that's what we are trying to do, to start somewhere, and then more people see, oh, I want to be part of this. And you say, oh, this is how we do it. This is the training we get. This is how we understand the things. And then we start creating a communities, like a small communities, and the community start to grow. And like I remember in 2017, when we want to create an organization, we were only 5 or 6 girls. And now we have, in 7 towns in Togo, we have almost like 200 volunteers in those towns all over Togo that are trying to induce change in their community. It can be just maybe having a group of youth, you gather them and you discuss about the subject, you discuss about the issue, and then like solutions starts to come from them. And it's also important as young African, we have to start thinking about how we leverage local solutions. Because sometimes we feel like, oh, maybe we have the best idea to change what is happening in the community, but no, they are living the problem, so they have more. There is more chance that the solution that they will suggest, if you give them the tool to find a solution, there is more chance that their solution will work than something you import from from somewhere. So we have to start creating an ecosystem where people or community can can think about their own solution, can ask themselves the right question or to find the right problem, and start designing the right solution to it, and start implementing it themselves or with help of other people. So for me, it would be that I speak too long. So
No,
for me,
it's wonderful.
first start somewhere.
No,
You have to start somewhere. And
the
then
lessons
you
you've
have
given
to,
us are so profound. The lessons you've given us are so profound because, one, I agree with this issue of when you go into communities and local areas, there exists a wealth of knowledge and experience. And the fact that too many people assume that they know best and go into work in communities as if they're going to just solve their problems is the incorrect one. And the one you're saying of us engaging local communities, finding local solutions, and building on the resources we have at our disposal is critical for us to imagine and build a future that is not reliant on external people, but on our own strengths and our own passion. So yes, wonderful. Thanks so much, Rosaline, for sharing that. And I agree on the point of starting somewhere. I was at a school assembly just about 2 hours ago, invited to speak on Africa Day. And a lot of the young people, they were asking, the one main question was, where do we start? How do we get involved? This process, we want to be part of this generation of young Africans who are leading change and are doing such great work. But how do we start? And I said the same thing. You have to start somewhere. It doesn't take you rocket science, or you don't have to get PhDs to do this work. All you need is your conviction. If you want to assemble a team around you, like you said, 4 or 5 of you begin this thing, it grows and grows and grows because of what you put and invest in into this kind of work. But without wasting more time, I mean, the same type of thing has happened before. Shari, you mentioned now that you are the co-founder of an organization who you've taken the step and you started somewhere. You recognize an issue in not just the country, but the continent. And as Rosalind said, we live in a continent that's dominated by men, unfortunately. And how do we start shifting that so that the policies and the work that's being done influence the reality of how so many women, non-conforming people actually experience on the day-to-day? Shari, your experience as a co-founder and how you writing the script.
Whew. um, when I get asked questions like that, sometimes I wish I had like a really thought out answer. But I guess all I would say is that I didn't expect to do the work I'm doing now, right? So when I started the Menstrual Project, I just started it from like a basic level of like people. I just recognized people didn't have like sanitary pads, so then I wanted to do a sanitary drive, right? And the more I engaged with different people and the more I engaged with what period poverty actually is, the more I was like, wait a goddamn minute, something is wrong here. Like something is very wrong here. As like someone who's been a feminist basically her whole life and who is both queer and Black and someone who experiences a lot of the oppressions, right? A lot of the work I do, I think in the beginning was driven by anger towards patriarchy and misogyny, right? It's exhausting having a vagina living in South Africa. I'm not gonna lie to you. The violence a lot of women and queer people face on a daily basis is just, it's exhausting. It doesn't even make me angry anymore. It just makes me tired, right? And so when I started the Menstrual Project, it was very much driven by curiosity and it was very much driven by anger. But the longer I stayed in the Menstrual Project, because I think we're about 4 years now, and we're also small organization. It's like 5 of us on my team. The more I realized that a big issue and a big result of patriarchy is that a lot of people aren't close to their own bodies and a lot of people don't understand their bodies, right? And there's a huge gap, especially because of the education system, where a lot of people are so depersonalized from their bodies that they are so ashamed of their bodies. And a lot of the work I do, especially because it's tied to womanhood and it's tied to queerhood and it's tied to just a lot of the ways we are conditioned to hate ourselves. The work I do is more coming from a space of teaching people not only about menstruation and dignity, not only trying to fight period poverty, which I think is a form of gender-based violence that no one talks about, but the fact that a big ethic of the Menstrual Project is we also need to teach people that your body is nothing to be ashamed of, right? Because I think loving yourself and caring for yourself is also a form of radicality against a violent system that wants you to hate yourself. And we're very much based on a love ethic of it is important for you to know yourself. It is important for you to understand your body, and it is important for you to care about your body because that is also a form of protest, especially when you're a woman. Especially when you're a woman of color in a world that wants you to be resilient and strong and tough and hard all the time. So when I started the Menstrual Project, it came from a space of, which is why we also educate men, because we also want men not to only fully understand, because I'm not going to go on a rant on the education system and how it just fails a lot of young people when it comes to sex education, mental health education, menstruation education, because there's huge gaps in the education system. But it's more of teaching people to understand their bodies because it's so vital, especially in a country like South Africa where sexual violence is so rife. We need to teach people to respect their own bodies so they can have the ability to respect other people's bodies. People think consent is just something you wake up and do. Consent is something you learn. When you learn to respect someone else's body and see them as a person, then you can respect your own body and see yourself as a person. So when it comes to menstruation dignity, that's why we are fighting period poverty so hard, because it is disgusting that we have normalized people not even being able to have a pad when it's not their fault, you know, when someone has to choose between food and a pad? How can you, it's gross that we've developed a system that allows people to do that, that forces people to do that. Sorry, so like menstruation dignity really is, it's tied to so many things: sexual health, mental health, feminist work, because menstruation is normal, your period is normal. And the fact that I've had to live with that shame of like, oh, hide your pad, when I was like 16, when like I'm passing boys, like, oh, hide your pad, hide your tampon. Why? Like, menstruation is normal. I shouldn't be ashamed of something that is good for my body, that is part of my body, that is helping my body survive. Because at the end of the day, I shouldn't be ashamed of my body in the first place.
Incredible. Pearls of wisdom, even though you were saying you didn't know, you didn't want to articulate it in a particular way. You've given us so much food for thought, so much to think about. And I think it speaks to the crisis we're in and why we have to challenge, like those who got together 60 years ago, that it might have existed then, the patriarchy, these forms of oppressions. But at that time, the fight was for independence. And that time, the fight was against apartheid and so on. And today we live in and exist in a time where they aren't as huge. I think the framing of the independence movement, or the framing of what oppression is today, has to change with what we currently face. And therefore, the issues of patriarchy, the issues of gender-based violence, of young people not being economically active, by the systems that exist, not by some weird random occurrence. This is by systems that are failing us. And Ruth clearly indicated how we need to use those systems and fight for it to change so that it benefits us. Thanks so much for that, Shari. And we depending on time, we'll probably come back to some of you all to give your last inputs. But Cass, you've heard now a couple of speakers. You yourself have engaged in phenomenal activism work. You know, I've been having this difficulty for the last few years on how, even within this space, we've allocated activism to the side, to the periphery.
Yeah.
And, you know, people like Shari, for example, have showed me otherwise, have showed me that, you know, poetry, music, dance, these are things that are front and part and parcel of any form of struggle that we wage for change. How is it that you are doing this and creating the script and rewriting the script for this change?
Wow, that's an amazing question. Thank you. Well, I think I need to start to say that, you know, it's very easy for an African artist to be inspired. I mean, Africa is the ultimate well of inspiration. You know, it's so easy for an African artist to have something to say, to want to say something, to want to present something, to want to connect people. We were born to inspire and be inspired. I think but the most difficult thing is to be motivated now, you know. As African artists, I think we understand, we have this burning feeling within us to know that we are the custodians of heritage. You know, we are the storytellers, we are the brand ambassadors of Africa. You know, we observe things, we see things, we can connect the dots in ways that other people can't, which is why we create art that appeals to so many people and speaks to people across various, you know, demographics, ages, genders, religions, and you know, and so forth. So my work is focused on motivating artists to keep inspiring people, you know, to keep reminding young Africans that Africa is something that is so beautiful and something that is worth fighting for. That's why artists, you know, exist. As you rightly said, we have been there and we will continue to be there in every struggle, in every move forward. Even when we take 2 steps back, we'll still be there to kind of help edge people on, you know, to nudge people on. This, unfortunately, is our curse to bear. Because it's hard to be motivated as an artist, because most people don't consider it to be a job. You know, they don't consider it to be something that's worth paying for. Now, how do we keep going when everyone else is going to make money and we're kind of we're in the background, but everyone is still expecting us to present work that is supposed to go to the Cannes Film Festival, work that is supposed to be nominated for a Grammy, for a BET, for a European award, and yada, 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 and all these global accolades, for a Pulitzer Prize, for a Nobel Prize for literature, and all of these things. But how do we do these things if we're not supported? If we're not supported financially, if we're not supported mentally, if we're not supported emotionally, if we're not supported intellectually as well with our skills, if our capacity isn't built. And so my sister and I, who are both artists, we both studied theater at the University of Malawi. She did theater and philosophy, and I did theater and music. So we're pretty much art nerds. And we decided to start this hub where our job is just to believe in artists. Like, our motto is, we're in the business of believing in people. So we started this, as young artists, especially because we're appealing to millennials and people from the Gen Z demographic, because I think there is just a very different and unique and very future forward perspective towards the African identity that needs to be nurtured within these people. And so we started Good Talent because we believe that, that Africans are talented, young Africans are talented, and we think they can use their talent for good. And so we do skills incubation, we do free workshops, we connect people, we do mentorship, we do digital marketing as well, we do digital storytelling on our social media platforms, we organize events, especially intergenerational discussions, so that we kind of arrive at the nexus of where young people are at and where people from the older generation are thinking, and how we can, kind of how we can see each other's perspectives, especially when it comes to youth participation and the future of the creative industries. We also do advocacy. So we meet with, with leaders in the creative arts, leaders in the youth sector, leaders in the gender sector, to kind of get young people to be able to voice their views, ask questions, to get leaders within our networks to be aware of certain things that might perhaps be skipping their radar, because, artists really aren't, as you've said, they're kind of sidelined a bit, artists and artivists are kind of sidelined a bit. So we want to kind of remind people that we are primary catalysts in the ecosystem of development and the ecosystem of good governance. Yeah, so that's pretty much what we do, but we also produce things. So currently in the work, we are producing an encyclopedia for women in the arts in Malawi. Yeah, so if you ever want to find out what women in Malawi have contributed to any sector in the arts and media, in 6 months, you'll be able to find that online, and we'll make sure that we share that with everyone. And we are also producing a board game, which is a trivia board game about Malawi, which we're going to share far and wide. Doing our part to maintain the heritage while also, perpetuating the social enterprise, so people understand that you can make money while making art. So yeah, that's the work that I do. But once again, artists are born to inspire and be inspired. And yeah, I'm so glad I get to be here and talk about my work, and just it's a blessing, honestly.
It is a blessing, and indeed you are a blessing, because that kind of passion, that kind of love for your country, for the continent, for our people in general, is so phenomenal. And I thank you for keeping it up. Even in the difficult days that we face, we maintain that, and really I'm honored. I do want to visit Malawi soon, and I have made that promise to you, including tasting the very great chili sauce that was given to me a while ago. But thanks so much for that, Cass. And you're absolutely correct in saying artists are there to inspire and to keep inspiration going. We saw it through the independence movements. We saw it post that. And I think it's up to us to rewrite that script on whether or not we want to invest more in artists and in that kind of work, which again comes down to how we view the world and what is it we want to change from it. Thank you so much. We now have Lawrence Manaka, who's doing incredible work in the education space. By the way, Ruth, Lawrence is one of the new or perhaps even yourself, Cass. Lawrence is on the new cohort of Future Elect, and also one of the Future Elect Fellows. Lawrence, your parting shots, your work that you've been doing, inspiring at such a young age already, such great change. How do you do it?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking this people in this room are actually really great leaders who are like literally doing great work in their community that I'm like, it's good to actually see people who are like-minded and who are using different spaces essentially do the work of community building that and shaping for the better. With me, equal education. So joining equal education, I think before I even joined equal education, for me it has always been. I think I've always been in touch with myself a bit more, and being in touch with myself a bit more meant that I had to start questioning what is really going around, in my community specifically, right? Because I remember back then, and Ivory Park is one of the most underprivileged communities, and even within Ivory Park, you'll still find that there are some areas that are a bit well off, and because of that structure, you find that there are also schools that are also well off and schools that are the worst, right? And I found myself in the schools that were actually the worst. But if I was walking 10 minutes down the road or 6 minutes down the road, there was a school that was actually great, right? So it started with questioning for me. And then I became, an ISOL president of that school. And I remember the first day, and that's what always been fine. If I get to become the ISOL president of the school, what I'm going to demand, and it's going to be clear, is that we want a proper school. Because we've been using, a school that had, mobile classes, temporary structures, and they've been there for more than 10 years. And, they were no longer conducive for learning and teaching. And I was like, if there's anything I'm going to do with this term, is to do that. I remember I came in, and 2 months in, we held the first shutdown from that school. So, with my RCL, and we led a march of 1,500 to shut down the school. That got the NPC of Education to come to that school, and later on it got the Minister of Education to come. I wish it was a successful story, but even today the school is still that way because our leaders lack political will. I think that's the best way to say it for me, because all the resources are available, but we're not seeing any sort of progress, right? And then from there, I decided to join equal education. I thought, look, if I could do this at a small scale, there's a need to amplify this because so many other learners are going through the same challenges as me. I think I was privileged enough to have the textbooks at that school, but I know someone in Limpopo does not have the textbooks, someone in the Eastern Cape. Others are even using, Hitler twins. So I joined equal education where we literally, are engaged in grassroots mobilization. So we go into schools, we speak to, young learners, and we start activating them to actively think about what could be wrong with the situation, because I think one of the things that happened is that, because we are used to the system being the way it is, we don't even question why is it like here. And because we don't question why we're here, we then do not find solutions, around the problems that we face. So that's what we do. We go into communities, schools, and then we activate them. So the learners that are activated are called equalizers, right? So they're there to equalize the gap, and the gap is policy and implementation, right? So we do that. We go into the school to activate them. We have ISNs in school meetings. We speak about the challenges that we're facing, and then we'll come up with campaigns, right? So our campaigns are led by research. Say, for example, overcrowding, which is a big problem out there. We'll have that overcrowding. We research it, and after that, we then decide, to engage with the government. And because, like I said, our leaders have the time, we then will take it to the streets half the time. And it is through social media pressure, it is through writing to them, it is through so many efforts that they then get to respond to at the end of the day. So I think for me, also joining equal education was because I realized that I think I had opted out of the system. You opt out of the political space system or the political party system because you realize that not so many people really speak to the things that you want to speak about as a young person. And at that time, and still at this time for me, is education. And I was like, how best do I then go and influence policy to ensure that the things that I want to see reflected are still reflected? So equal education then became a vehicle for that, right? So I'm thinking then write policy that implement. And I think the biggest law by far for us that is very outstanding is the norm of infrastructure, the norms and standards of infrastructure. They then explain what a school should look like in order for us to refer to it as a school, right? But you find that even with these laws that are out there, it's huge victory, there's still lack of implementation, So we are constantly thinking around that idea. So essentially, going into equal education was the fact that I need to find a vehicle for me to create change. right now I'm a lover of the streets. Right? I'm a lover of the streets. I mean that call me for a march and say, look, this is the problem. I'm there with you, right? Because I think young people taking up action in the best way they can, either through social media or through going to those marches. I think that for me is what activates them and get them thinking about the situations that they're in, and it's a way of contributing to change. I wish we could find creative ways of like organizing, but currently as it stands, that is what we have, and that for us works. So I'm thinking, like through equal education, I think so many other young learners, we're gonna get them to eventually opt back into the system, because I'm thinking as I once opted out of there's so many other people that opted out of the system because of where they find themselves. But I'm hoping we're going to be able to get them to opt back into the system. So for me, the work of equal education and the work I do equal education is quite great because it shapes the education system and policy. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lawrence. It's so pivotal that education is transformed, not just in the communities you're in, but across the continent, because we all agree that education is failing us and it needs to change. And this is coming from a person who, like myself, who studied to become a teacher for so long and actually is not in a school any longer, because I think we need to push for deeper systemic changes. And you're right around the interface between implementation and policy. Fully agree with you. We have two more speakers before we go to a close for today. I'm going to ask Loka to come in and explain what is it that she does. In fact, there's quite a long list, and I'm so bummed that I didn't bring you in when you were speaking with Shari and the others, because I think it relates so much to the work you're doing around young girls and how you help transform their lives, particularly starting from a young level. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I listened to everyone. I think I was just going to be that panelist that would just listen and say, you've done well, you've done well. But I learned from all of you, and it's been so, I don't even know how I feel hearing all of that they've been doing. And this just shows that we're not alone in trying to change whatever that is going wrong in Africa, and trying to better the ones that have been worked on by the other generations before us. Basically, I'm one of the youngest activists, one of the youngest feminists in the country that started her work way earlier. I have been on radio shows when I was 9. So I started talking about what we face in the school, and from a child's perspective, something that is not really filtered, to where I am today. I've grown on the media space, ensuring that the rights of children and youths are being discussed and people know about them, especially school-going children. So because I've been a leader almost every stage of my life, especially high school, I grew out of that entire leadership role, trying to ensure that I don't just keep off, okay, I was head girl and that's it, because there were a lot of people that were looking up to me, and people who wouldn't even know about current news would call me and say, okay, I heard this is going on, what is happening, what are you doing? So it sounded to me like a lot of people are still looking up to me, and I had to do something. So I joined the CSO space as a social cohesion trainer, where we trained a lot of youths, because we were just transiting from an era, from the Yaya Jammeh era, that was so traumatic for a lot of people. And for many of us who were born while he was still president, we didn't know any other system aside from that autocratic, whatever the word is, that entire moment. So it's been so stressful. It's like living a fake life or living a lie, because everything that we've been taught about government is not what government is. It's Yaya Jammeh's government. So we had to move from that era, and we had to ensure communities now adapt social cohesion and peace building, because there were a lot of there is still a lot of confusion about who is right and who is wrong. And also the youths really played their part in ensuring that the government was changed. But now we have changed to a government that is slowly creeping in to what Yahya Jammeh was as well. And now we're in that setup where we have to convince people that yes, Jammeh was bad. We did the right thing by putting him out, and also trying to change the mentality that, oh, we need to bring back Jammeh, because people are no more looking at the different scandals, but they're just looking at Jammeh as in the 5% infrastructural development that he's done in the country. So aside that, I started doing I started going to schools to discuss about menstruation and menstrual hygiene as well. So I was so happy when Shari was talking about menstruation, because when I was in high school, teachers rather had to give us sanitary materials, because we were in school from morning till evening and then we had to go home. It's not like a boarding system. But then sometimes your menstruation just meets you in the school and then you don't know what to do. We are in the city. What happens to these students that are in the villages and they have to go through the same thing? What is happening? Because the government even has to subsidize and give them feeding for school. So are they really giving them also sanitary materials? And when we did our investigation and all the survey that we had to do, we realized that most of the girls have to stay out of school almost a whole week because they're on their period. And since the government is not serious about anything female, we had to be the stubborn people that would go into the schools and ensure that the kids understand. So what we're trying to do is go to different high schools, go to different junior schools, ensure they know about menstrual hygiene, menstrual health, their mental health during menstruation, and the different infections that they could get, cervical infections that could also lead to cervical cancer. And all of these issues that are interconnected, most times we get nurses to go with us to explain these things. The plan is to ensure that every school understands that not having a menstrual pad or menstrual supply in the school can be hazardous to the children. While when we have all the schools thinking in that way, we could easily move this to the government to ensure that it's a bill that has been passed, that every school must have these things. But we need to start from the grassroots. So sometimes we realize we think we know what is good for people, and then we try to bring it forward and say, okay, this is what I think is good for you. But if you don't make the person understand that this is something that you could work on, you can even suggest it to the government, and once they do their private investigation to these schools, the schools can say they don't need it because they don't understand why they need it. Aside that, we do pad drives as well, and then we do sort of a crowdfunding. With the funds that we gather, we try to get sanitary pads to different communities. Recently, we were working with reusable sanitary pads, and on Sunday, we're going to the prisons as well, to the main prison of the country to deliver reusable sanitary pads to the female inmates that are there, and also to have a full day discussion on their rights and on their on mental health and also their menstrual health. So we're taking a doctor as well to check them and to see if they have any infection as well, because these are things that the prison officers would not really look into, because it's not something that they're particularly seeing that is surfacing. Okay, you have an infection and I can really tell. And most of these women would not have that confidence also to talk to these prison officers to tell them that there's something wrong with them, there's something wrong with their vagina, or there's something fishy. They would also see it as normal not to talk to them and would want to wait until their time and the jail time is over before they go seek medical attention. So we're doing that on Sunday in commemoration with the International Menstrual Hygiene Day. Aside that, we do capacity building, because most of the youths that came to say, I want to walk with you, Loka, I want to walk with you, I want to walk with you. Most of them, I had issues with few of them who are rape apologists. And then I realized it's not that they really want to support them. They don't understand what the concept is. They don't understand the concept of gender-based violence. They don't understand a lot of things. So it's always easier for us to have trainings where even the team that we work with and 21 other people are taken through 7 weeks. It's actually 21 days training, but stretched across 7 weeks, where they're taken to a really hectic training period with few activists in the country, lawyers, medical people that could help them understand certain concepts. It's not as if we are activists because we want to make noise, we want to be seen, we want to be heard. That is not the reason why we're activists. We really want to ensure that there is change. And unless they see it that way, you'll end up having people in your team that just want to be there because you have media that is always looking for your progress or whatever you're doing. They want to be there because you're getting recognized, but you're not actually having a team because they want to be there for the impact. So it's really important as well that we strengthen the capacity of the people that we also want to make their impact. At the end of the day, it's always, at the end of the training, I go like, you've learned a lot, you're part of this team. What can you do? Not just waiting for me to say, this is an activity. I want you to spearhead an activity, go back to a community, do it and bring me feedback. Let us know so that it doesn't look like I'm the one doing it. I don't want to be the only one. I cannot be the only one that can bring about change. The people that are coming to these trainings, the people that are being impacted, they can also go and impact the lives of many other people. So I started by saying I'm a very stubborn activist because basically we've had cases of, with the recent government, we've had cases of rape, and the country, the Gambia, recently awarded, I don't want to say a rapist, but I want to say a rapist as well. But again, awarded somebody that has been convicted for rape as the person of the year. And that could also really tell you what sort of country we are in, where while that rape case was going on, we had people that would go through the courts and support the rapist because they believe that the wife of the person is an independent woman and can do things on her own. So you realize that the society has been so corrupted because we want to believe people who are in suit and tie that are sitting in places and they're not capable of rape. And because you're an independent woman, anytime you want to file a case, it's always you want to gain money from it. So these are the different things that we're facing. And with that entire rape case, we had to do a lot of things. We had to ensure that people really got the facts from the rape case. And thanks to a lot of feminists that really stood out and wrote from the exact proceedings of the cases to ensure that people do not get misled by people that were actually trying to move away from the fact that there was rape. So aside that, we also had a mentee of mine that was killed in her house and was mutilated after she got killed. So that kind of destabilized my entire. Well, it kind of destabilized me because of how close I was with her. But again, she was in her house, in her room, and she got killed. That sends a very strong message that as Gambian women, we are not safe. Because if I can stay in my house and I can get killed in my house, and the government, up to date, it has been almost 3 years, the government did not release any statement about that. So we've been making a lot of noise to ensure that they make statements. So even at events that do not have anything to do with gender-based violence or anything, as far as there is a government official there, we ensure we remind them that there is blood on their hands and the autopsy report of this young girl has not been released and nobody knows what is happening. So basically, we keep saying these things, we keep ensuring that we're the eyes of the public. And so when it comes to Gambia, we're just walking and everybody would look at you as, you're the feminist, you're the people that are causing trouble. But yes, I want to be the one that is causing trouble because the government has to be accountable. So for different youths, I would want to close by saying that you don't have to be somebody, if you want to please everybody, sell ice cream. That is the simple thing. But if you want to create change, if you want to make an impact, you need to be ready to be stubborn. You need to be ready to be pointed at, and you need to be ready to take all the blame.
Thank you so much. I think that was very impassioned speech, but also giving us what life is like in the Gambia, for particularly women. And I mean, as a South African, we do relate, because it's one of the biggest countries in the world where gender-based violence occurs at such high, in fact, unimaginable rates, and yet it exists. Thank you so much, Loka, for sharing that with us. We have Enoch, who's going to give us the last contribution for the day. Enoch, you have an extensive experience. I'm going to ask you to stick to the 5 minutes, if possible, please. But yeah, give us a snapshot into how you are being the script writer of your destiny and of the destiny of the continent as a whole.
Wow, Ivan, this is first of all, I need to say again, thank you for inviting me. One of the most fulfilling experiences I'm having in my life is to listen to change makers, is to listen to young people who have aspiration of creating a different Africa. And I can assure you that young people get it now. And I want to say that the future of Africa is in safe hands. When I listen to the change makers on this panel, and the work and the passion and the enthusiasm and the kind of boldness that they are coming forward, putting into their work. First hold on for a second. Sorry, someone was asking me something. So
okay.
What I'm saying is that I'm really inspired. This is really my major takeaway today, that young people now are at the center of driving the change they want to see in Africa. When I founded Leadmind 4 years ago, I was driven by 4 major things. Where I was born from. I was born in a very small village, and all we valued was, yes, we didn't value so much. There wasn't so much around me, other than what really my father had, what my parents had. But I was sent to school at a very young age. And there was a new world around me. Then when I got an opportunity to join university, I also got an opportunity to really get to work before I even graduated. And I started off my work in Rwanda, working directly with young people. And the more I worked directly with young people, the more I listened to their aspiration, the more I understood the questions they were asking. And I also profoundly realized that really young people don't need much. What they need is support, so that they can be able to connect dots and understand clearly how they can move from point A to point B. And they needed networks. They needed a community around them that can be supportive along the way as they worked on ideas, as they worked on a future they wanted to create. So I realized that is really that is the kind of future that I needed to move in. That is the kind of platform that I needed to create, to enable young people to have a supportive community, to enable young people to realize that they are the architects of the future they want to create. We have this common narrative around in Africa, that Africa is poor, that young people need space at the table, at the decision-making table. What I'm realizing is that the more we really push that narrative, the more we actually put ourselves in a weaker position. When we are telling young people that they are really young, they need space at the table, we need to change that narrative and say, young people, you are the ones that need to create that space at the table. You are the ones that need to push these leaders to listen to your cries, to really bend to your enthusiasm, to your energy, to really listen to your new perspectives and how you see the kind of Africa that you want to create. So I am really, really glad. I have had numerous opportunities along the way. I have gotten to evolve as an individual and gain more exposure, and the more it has pushed me to create platforms, to create opportunities, to design spaces that shape networks that support young people to bring about a change. And I want to say, let's continue building. Let's keep the momentum. Let's not bend to the narrative that we are weak, that we can't realize a new Africa. Yeah, that is all I have to say today.
Thank you so much, Enoch. You know, I am left so bewildered because I know that there's so much more that each of you can share. And I wish we had the time and opportunity to do that here today. But unfortunately, given that we're out of time, what I can promise is that we can continue the conversation offline. We now connected to each other for the first time, and I think we must keep building on these links and these relationships so that we can imagine and actually, like you're saying, build the Africa we want. I'm not going to give everyone the last mic, but what I want us to do is to describe the future of this continent in one word for yourselves. What does the future of this continent look like to you in one word? So you can go ahead, Enoch. One word.
I think thriving.
Thriving, lovely. Loka?
I was just thinking of a word and you got me, but I'll say amazing.
Amazing, lovely. Ruth?
It's a tough one.
One word.
But definitely bright.
Right. Okay, I love it. Nyokase?
Allow me to use Renaissance.
Renaissance. Okay, lovely. I see the Beyonce in you coming out here. Lawrence? Building. Lovely. Rosaline?
I would say determination.
Say it again.
Determination.
Wow. Okay, wonderful. Shari?
Safe.
Lovely. I'm going to end off by saying the Africa I want is the leader of the world. And I know it's not one word, but I guess that's also facilitator's privilege. Thank you so much. I highly enjoyed this session. Thank you for offering your time for the last hour and 15 minutes, in fact longer because of the sound check. You have honored us today in the most blessed way possible, with your time, with your expertise, and with your experience. I can't thank you enough, but I can say that I'm left even more hopeful and motivated that the Africa we want is possible, and that the more of us we create through our networks, through our support structures, through every single space that we occupy, we can then create the Africa we want.
I agree with you.
And I'm so hopeful that of the future that we're going to be building together in our generation, in our lifetime. So thank you all so much. A big thank you and shout out to the Center for Creative Arts at UKZN and the Ambedkar Foundation for hosting it. We look forward to many, many more exciting conversations like this with young changemakers from across the continent and across the world. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of